When strangers disappoint you, that's life. When your children stab you in the back, that's something else entirely. When you've been pushed too far, when you've been humiliated beyond what any human should endure, there comes a point where kindness becomes weakness, where forgiveness becomes foolishness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The water dripped incessantly from my bathroom ceiling, the steady rhythm a mocking reminder of everything wrong with my life at 62. I'd placed a metal pot underneath to catch the drops, and each ping echoed through my cramped one-bedroom apartment like a tiny hammer striking at my dignity. My name is Michelle Campbell. For 35 years, I taught high school English in Springfield, Massachusetts. I raised 2 children alone after my husband Thomas died of a heart attack at 43. I put both my daughter Melissa and my son Samuel through college without a penny of debt. I did everything right, or so I thought. That Tuesday morning, as the autumn rain pounded against my windows, I called my landlord for the 5th time that month. "Mrs. Rutherford, I understand you're busy, but the leak is getting worse," I said, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "There's a new one in the kitchen now, too. I've got 3 properties with burst pipes from the cold snap, Michelle," she said, not unkindly but with finality. "The plumber will get to you when he can. Maybe next week." I hung up and stared at the water stains spreading across my ceiling like a disease. The apartment wasn't much, but it was all I could afford on my teacher's pension. After the medical bills from my hip replacement 2 years ago, my savings had dwindled to almost nothing. My phone pinged with a notification. It was Melissa posting on Instagram again. I shouldn't have looked, but some masochistic part of me always did. There she was, my beautiful 35-year-old daughter, standing proudly in front of a handsome colonial house with a "sold" sign in the front yard. Her arm was wrapped around an older woman with silver-streaked black hair, her mother-in-law Patricia. The caption read, "So excited to help Mom P move into her dream home. She deserves every comfort after all she's done for our family. Blessed to our family first." I read it twice, feeling the familiar coldness spreading through my chest. Mom P. Not me, her actual mother, but Patricia, who had done nothing but criticize Melissa's choices until she married Patricia's son, Charles, an investment banker with the right connections and the right family background. The right background. Unlike me, the public school teacher who wore secondhand clothes so her children could have new ones. I scrolled through the comments, each one a fresh paper cut. "You're such a wonderful daughter-in-law. Patricia is so lucky to have you. That house is gorgeous. She'll be so happy there." I set the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. 3 months ago, when the building inspector had come and declared my apartment building in need of major repairs, I'd asked Melissa if I could stay with them temporarily. Their house had 5 bedrooms for just the 2 of them. They'd been trying for a baby for years without success. "Mom, it's not a good time," she'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Charles is up for partner, and we need to focus on making the right impression. You understand, don't you?" I did understand. I understood perfectly. I was an embarrassment. The shabby mother with the wrong accent who might say the wrong thing at a dinner party. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter, who I'd raised to value character over appearance, who I'd taught that kindness matters more than status, was now ashamed of me while buying a house for her mother-in-law. The phone rang, startling me from my bitter reverie. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered, expecting a telemarketer or a scam call. "Is this Michelle Campbell?" The voice was male, professional, with a hint of a Boston accent. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Michael Abernathy. I'm an attorney with Pearson, Abernathy and Klein in Boston. I'm calling about your brother, William Campbell." I froze. William. My older brother, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly 20 years. "What about him?" I asked, my voice suddenly hoarse. There was a pause on the line. "I'm sorry to inform you that William passed away last month. Pancreatic cancer. It was quite sudden." I sank down onto my worn sofa, unsure what to feel. William and I had been close once, before the falling out. Before he sided with my ex-husband during the divorce, believing Thomas's lies about me. The betrayal had been complete, my own brother choosing my cheating husband over me. "Ms. Campbell?" the attorney prompted. "Yes, I'm here," I said. I'm sorry to hear that. There's something else, he continued. William named you as the sole beneficiary in his will. I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. That can't be right. We hadn't spoken in decades. Nevertheless, you are the beneficiary. Your brother amended his will 8 months ago, shortly after his diagnosis. He left you everything: his house in Beacon Hill, his investment portfolio, and his art collection. The estate is valued at approximately $12 million. The room seemed to tilt sideways. $12 million? I whispered. Before taxes, yes. William was quite successful in his investments. He left a letter for you as well. I'd like to schedule a time for you to come to our offices. I agreed to meet him the following Monday, moving through the conversation on autopilot. After hanging up, I sat perfectly still, watching the water drip into the pot as my mind raced. William had left me everything. My brother, who I'd written off as dead to me years ago, had made me a millionaire in his final act. I opened my phone again and looked at Melissa's Instagram post. The perfect house for perfect Patricia. The mother who deserved every comfort. Not me, apparently. I scrolled further back in Melissa's feed. There were no pictures of me. Not from her birthday when I'd taken 3 buses to bring her the handmade quilt I'd spent months working on. Not from Christmas when I'd scraped together enough for a small gift certificate to her favorite restaurant. I was invisible. I opened my text messages and found the last exchange with my son, Samuel. Me. Hi, sweetie. Just wondering if you got the card I sent for your anniversary? The message showed as read, but there was no reply. There never was unless he needed something. The last time he'd contacted me was 6 months ago when he'd asked to borrow $2,000 for a business venture. Money I didn't have but somehow found anyway. Putting it on a credit card I was still paying off. He'd promised to pay me back. He hadn't. I walked to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Gray hair I couldn't afford to color anymore. Deep lines around my eyes and mouth from years of worry. Shoulders slightly stooped from carrying everyone else's burdens but never my own. But in my eyes, something was changing. A coldness was creeping in, replacing the hurt. The woman in the mirror straightened her shoulders. William's money wouldn't just change my living situation. It would change everything. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the leaking ceiling, the rusty water stains spreading like a cancer. I texted it to Melissa with a simple message. No need to worry about me. Everything's fine here. She read it. She didn't respond. And that's when I knew exactly what I needed to do. That night, as the rain continued to pour and the leaks worsened, I sat at my small kitchen table and began to make a list. A list of debts. Not financial ones, but emotional. A tally of betrayals, large and small. A catalog of wounds that had never healed. By morning, I had a plan. William's unexpected gift hadn't just given me financial freedom. It had given me something far more valuable. The power to make things right. The Beacon Hill townhouse was like something from another world. My brother's world, not mine. 5 stories of red brick and black shutters, nestled among Boston's elite. As I climbed the steps, key in hand, I wondered if William had found happiness here in his final years. Not that it mattered now. Michael Abernathy, the attorney, had been efficient and respectful. The paperwork was straightforward. The letter from William less so. Michelle, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Cancer has a way of clarifying things. I was wrong about Thomas. I discovered the truth years ago but was too proud to reach out. You deserved better from me as your brother. You deserved better from everyone. I've watched from afar as your children grew up and became strangers to you. I saw how they took and took while giving nothing in return. I recognized it because I did the same to you once. This inheritance won't fix what's broken between us, but perhaps it will give you the freedom I never had. The freedom to live without compromise, without begging for scraps of affection from those who should love you unconditionally. Use it wisely, little sister. William. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. William had seen it all. Seen through the perfect family photos on social media. Seen through the holiday cards with no mention of me. Seen what I had been too blinded by maternal love to acknowledge. The townhouse interior was stunning. Original hardwood floors, crown molding. a grand staircase winding to the upper floors. The furniture was masculine but elegant. Leather sofas, antique desks, Persian rugs atop gleaming wood. William had lived well. I spent that first day wandering from room to room, touching surfaces, opening drawers, trying to reconnect with the brother I'd lost decades ago. In his study, I found albums filled with newspaper clippings, my teaching awards, community recognitions, even the small write-up when I'd published a book of poetry through a local press 15 years ago. He'd followed my life while I'd pretended he didn't exist. That night, I slept in what had been his guest room, unable to bring myself to use his bedroom. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. The next morning, I met with the financial advisor William had used. The investment portfolio was diverse and stable. Blue-chip stocks, municipal bonds, a few higher-risk ventures that had paid off handsomely. The advisor, a young woman named Amara with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, walked me through everything. "Your brother was very strategic," she explained. "He restructured everything after his diagnosis to minimize the estate tax burden. You're looking at about $9 million after taxes, depending on market fluctuations. $9 million. The number seemed abstract, disconnected from reality. "What would you like to do with these assets, Ms. Campbell?" Amara asked. What indeed? "I need time to think," I told her. "For now, let's keep everything as it is." I spent the next week settling into my new life. I hired a cleaning service for the townhouse. I bought new clothes, not ostentatious, but well-made pieces that fit properly and didn't bear the faint shame of discount racks. I visited a salon and let them color my hair back to its natural auburn, cut in a style that framed my face and took years off my appearance. I looked like me again. Or perhaps, for the first time in decades, I looked like who I was meant to be. Neither of my children called during this time. Neither noticed my absence from my apartment. The landlady, Mrs. Rutherford, had my new number, but no one else did. I was a ghost, vanished from a life no one cared about anyway. On day 10, I called Melissa. "Mom?" she answered, surprise evident in her voice. "Is everything okay?" Not, "How are you?" or, "I've been meaning to call." Just the immediate assumption that I would only contact her if something was wrong. "Everything's fine," I said smoothly. "I've had some changes in my life. I'm in Boston now." "Boston? What are you doing there?" "I've come into some money. My brother William passed away and left me his estate." Silence on the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "Uncle Will? But I thought you weren't speaking." "We weren't. People can surprise you even after they're gone." I let that sink in. "Anyway, I wanted to let you know I've moved. I'm having the apartment cleared out." "Moved? To Boston permanently?" Now there was a new note in her voice. Calculation. "Yes. I've inherited his townhouse in Beacon Hill. It's quite lovely." Another beat of silence. "Beacon Hill? That must be expensive." "It is," I confirmed, offering nothing more. "Well, that's wonderful, Mom. You deserve some good luck." Her tone had changed completely. Warm syrup where before there had been only cool distance. "Charles and I should come visit. It's been too long since we've had a proper visit." Had it ever occurred to her to invite me to her home? To the house she'd bought for Patricia? That would be nice. I lied. "But I'm still settling in. Perhaps in a few weeks." Of course," she rushed to agree. "Just let us know when. We're very flexible." I bet they were. "I should go. I have an appointment with the financial advisor." Another piece of bait dangled. "Financial advisor? How much did Uncle Will leave you exactly?" The question came quickly, too eagerly. "Enough," I said. "We can talk more when I see you. Give my best to Charles." I hung up before she could respond. Samuel called within the hour. Melissa had obviously reached out to him immediately. "Hey, Mom," he said, as if we spoke regularly, as if he hadn't ignored my texts and calls for months. "Melissa told me about Uncle Will. That's amazing news." "Is it?" I asked mildly. "You barely knew him." "Well, no, but it's great for you. You've had it rough." Had it rough. As if my struggle had been some temporary inconvenience and not years of sacrifice and hardship while he lived in his downtown Chicago condo, Taking expensive vacations he documented extensively on Facebook without ever offering to fly me out to visit. Yes, things are looking up, I said. How are you, Samuel? How's the business venture? He hesitated just a fraction. Going great. Really great. In fact, we're looking at expanding, but we need some capital investment. I was thinking, that sounds exciting, I interrupted. We should discuss it when you visit. You are planning to visit your only mother in her new home, aren't you? Absolutely. I was just about to suggest that. I could fly out next weekend if that works. So eager now, so attentive. Next weekend would be fine. I'll text you the address. After hanging up, I sat in William's study, my study now, and looked out over the Boston skyline. The chess pieces were moving exactly as I'd anticipated. That afternoon, I visited a lawyer of my own choosing. Not William's firm, but a woman recommended by Amara. Rebecca Lynn was in her 50s, with a no-nonsense manner and a reputation for aggressive estate planning. I want to create a new will, I told her after explaining my situation, and I want to set up a series of trusts. Very specific trusts. She nodded, taking notes. What are your goals with these arrangements? I smiled thinly, teaching a lesson that's long overdue. Rebecca didn't flinch. She'd probably heard worse. I can work with that, she said, but let's phrase it more legally for the paperwork. We spent 3 hours outlining my plans. By the time I left her office, the framework was in place. The trap was set. All I needed now were the mice. Beacon Hill in autumn was postcard perfect. Cobblestone streets lined with trees turning gold and crimson, gas lamps casting a warm glow as dusk settled. I stood at my front window, watching as the taxi pulled up. Samuel stepped out first, then turned to pay the driver. Always generous with other people's money, never with his own time. I'd purposely not offered to pick him up from the airport. He looked up at the townhouse, clearly impressed by its grandeur, before climbing the steps and ringing the bell. I took my time answering. Mom! Samuel's hug was enthusiastic, enveloping. When had he last embraced me like this? Not at Christmas 3 years ago when he'd shown up empty-handed and left early to meet friends. Not at my birthday last year, which he'd forgotten entirely until Facebook reminded him 3 days later. It's good to see you, I said, the lie coming easily. I stepped back to look at him. Handsome like his father. The same strong jawline, the same charismatic smile that hid a fundamental selfishness. This place is incredible, he said, looking past me into the foyer with its crystal chandelier and marble floor. Uncle Will had great taste. He did, I agreed. Let me show you around. I guided him through the house, watching as his eyes cataloged every valuable item, every sign of wealth. In the study, he let out a low whistle at the collection of first-edition books. In the dining room, he commented on the antique silverware displayed in a glass cabinet. That's been in the family for generations, I told him. Your great-grandmother brought it from England. It must be worth a fortune, he said, and I could almost see him calculating its value. Some things are beyond price, I replied. Family heirlooms carry stories, history. He nodded absently, already moving on to examine a painting on the wall. Melissa and Charles arrived an hour later, bearing an expensive bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. Lilies, which I'd told her countless times triggered my allergies. I thanked her anyway and put them in the kitchen, away from the dining room where we would eat. Mom, you look amazing, Melissa gushed, taking in my tailored slacks and cashmere sweater, my freshly colored hair. Boston clearly agrees with you. Money agrees with everyone, I said with a small smile. Would you like some wine before dinner? I'd arranged for a catering service to deliver a meal, roasted rack of lamb, fingerling potatoes, haricots verts with almonds, the kind of meal I could never have afforded before, served on William's Wedgwood china. As we ate, the conversation flowed with artificial ease. My children asked about William, about the inheritance, carefully dancing around the questions they really wanted to ask. How much? What are you going to do with it? Where do we fit in? I've been thinking about the future, I said as we moved to the living room for coffee. About legacy. That's so important, Charles said eagerly. He was handsome in a bland way, with perfect teeth and carefully styled hair. The kind of man who'd never had to worry about how he'd pay his electric bill. Family legacy is everything. I nodded slowly. I agree. Which is why I've been thinking about how to structure my estate. The room grew quiet. I had their complete attention now. I've set up a meeting tomorrow with my estate attorney, I continued. I'd like all of you to join me. Of course, Mom, Melissa said quickly. Whatever you need. It's not about what I need, I corrected her gently. It's about what's right. That night, after they'd gone to their hotel, I'd claimed the guest rooms were being renovated. I sat in William's study, nursing a glass of his expensive scotch. I thought about the look in my children's eyes when I mentioned my estate. The naked want. The calculation. They thought they were so close to securing their future. If only they'd shown me a fraction of this attention, when I had nothing to give them but my love. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a navy suit I'd bought at Neiman Marcus, applying makeup with precision. Armor for the battle ahead. Rebecca Lynn's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. Her conference room offered panoramic views of the city, the Charles River glittering in the distance. Thank you all for coming, Rebecca said once we were seated around the polished table. She was immaculate in a charcoal gray suit, her dark hair cut in a severe bob. Michelle has asked me to outline the structure she's creating for her estate. My children and Charles leaned forward slightly, their postures attentive, eager. As you know, Rebecca continued, Michelle has inherited a substantial estate from her brother, valued at approximately $9 million after taxes, including real estate and investment assets. I watched their eyes widen. The number was finally concrete. Michelle has decided to create a series of trusts to manage these assets going forward. Rebecca opened a folder and distributed documents. These are summaries of what we've structured. I observed as they scanned the papers, their expressions shifting from anticipation to confusion. I don't understand, Melissa said, looking up. This says the main beneficiary is a charitable foundation? That's correct, Rebecca confirmed. The Michelle Campbell Foundation for Educational Equity will receive the bulk of the estate, approximately $7 million in assets and investments. But what about us? Samuel blurted out, then caught himself. I mean, that's wonderful, Mom. Education was always your passion. It was, I agreed. And still is. The foundation will provide scholarships to students who demonstrate academic excellence despite challenging circumstances. Students like I once was, who had to work multiple jobs to afford college. Charles cleared his throat. And the remaining $2 million? That's outlined on page 3, Rebecca directed. They flipped to the page simultaneously, eyes scanning rapidly. $1 million to be held in trust for Michelle's future care and medical needs, Melissa read aloud. And $1 million to be divided equally between Samuel and Melissa Campbell, to be dispersed under the following conditions. She trailed off, her face paling slightly as she read the conditions silently. Perhaps you'd like me to explain, Rebecca offered. Melissa nodded mutely. The trusts for Samuel and Melissa are structured as ethical behavior trusts, Rebecca explained. Each will receive quarterly payments of $12,500, $50,000 per year, contingent upon demonstrating care and support for their mother. What does that mean exactly? Samuel asked, his voice tight. It means, I said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began, that to receive your quarterly payment, you must show that you've maintained regular, meaningful contact with me. Weekly phone calls, monthly visits, holiday celebrations. The things most children do naturally out of love, you will now do for money. The silence in the room was absolute. If either of you fails to meet these conditions for 2 consecutive quarters, Rebecca continued professionally, their portion of the trust will be redirected to the foundation permanently. You're bribing us to be your children? Melissa's voice trembled with indignation. No, I said calmly. I'm paying you to pretend to be the children I thought I had, the children I deserved. This is insane, Samuel said, standing abruptly. You can't put conditions on family relationships. Can I? I raised an eyebrow. You've been putting conditions on our relationship for years. You only call when you need money. You ignore my messages. You buy houses for your mother-in-law while I live with leaking pipes. Melissa flinched at that last part. If you don't like the arrangement, I continued, you're free to walk away. The foundation will be grateful for the additional funding. You've changed, Melissa whispered, tears in her eyes. No, I corrected her. I've finally seen clearly. There's a difference. Charles, ever the pragmatist, was still reading the document. There's more here. Something about loan forgiveness? Yes, Rebecca nodded. Michelle has documented loans to both Samuel and Melissa over the years, totaling approximately $47,000 with interest. She's willing to forgive these loans as a gesture of goodwill, provided both parties sign the trust agreements today. Those weren't loans, Samuel protested. They were gifts. I smiled thinly. I've kept every text, every email where you promised to pay me back. Just until my next commission, Mom. I'll return it after this deal closes, Mom. Shall I continue? His face reddened. The choice is simple, I said. Sign and receive $50,000 a year for behaving like decent human beings, or walk away and pay back what you owe me, with interest. Rebecca slid the contracts across the table. You have 20 minutes to decide, she said. I have another appointment at 11. They signed, of course. Money speaks louder than pride, and my children had always been fluent in its language. I watched their signatures flow across the paper. Samuel's bold and aggressive, Melissa's neat and controlled. They didn't look at me as they signed away their pretense of autonomy. Congratulations, Rebecca said when the paperwork was complete. The first disbursements will begin next quarter, assuming all conditions are met. In the elevator down to the lobby, the silence was suffocating. Charles kept checking his phone, desperate for a distraction. Melissa stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. Samuel shifted his weight from foot to foot, restless energy betraying his inner turmoil. I've made reservations for lunch, I said as we exited the building. There's a lovely French bistro around the corner. I'm not hungry, Melissa snapped. That's your choice, I replied evenly. But the agreement you just signed includes this lunch. First violation would be a shame, wouldn't it? Her eyes widened slightly. I smiled, a cold curve of lips that held no warmth. You're going to monitor every interaction? Samuel asked incredulously. Keep score like some kind of mother waiting by the phone on her birthday? I interrupted. Like someone checking her messages on Christmas morning, hoping for some acknowledgement of her existence? Yes, something like that. The restaurant was elegant but understated, with white tablecloths and soft jazz playing in the background. The maitre d' greeted me by name. I'd visited twice before, establishing myself as a valued customer. Mrs. Campbell, your table is ready, he said with a small bow. Once seated, I ordered wine for the table, an expensive Bordeaux that William would have appreciated. My children ordered their food with minimal enthusiasm. Charles, ever adaptable, attempted to make conversation. The foundation is a wonderful idea, he said. Education is so important. My mother always believed in its power to transform lives. Patricia again. The saint. The worthy mother. How is Patricia? I asked, taking a sip of wine. Settling into her new home? Melissa flushed. She's fine. I'd love to see it sometime. The house you bought her. I kept my tone light, conversational. It must be lovely. It's just a small ranch house, Melissa mumbled. Nothing like this. But it has no leaking pipes, I imagine. Another sip of wine. No water stains on the ceiling. Samuel cleared his throat. Mom, about the trust conditions. Let's not discuss business over lunch, I interrupted. Tell me about your work, Samuel. That venture you needed capital for. He shifted uncomfortably. It's going well. We're developing an app that helps people track their fitness progress. Fascinating. And you need investment capital? We did. We found it elsewhere. I'm sure you have. I smiled. And Melissa, how's the gallery? Still representing that sculptor you were so excited about last year? For the next hour, I asked questions about their lives that they couldn't believe I knew the answers to. Small details gleaned from social media they thought I didn't follow. From mutual acquaintances they didn't realize still spoke to me. I watched them squirm as they realized how much I'd been watching from the shadows while they pretended I didn't exist. After lunch, we stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. Well, this has been lovely, I said. But I have plans this afternoon. Perhaps dinner tomorrow? My house? 7 o'clock. We were planning to fly back tomorrow morning, Samuel said quickly. Were you? That won't fulfill the visitation requirements for this month. I checked my watch. You should change your flights. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. I walked away before they could respond, hailing a cab with a raised hand. I didn't look back to see their expressions. I didn't need to. The next month unfolded according to plan. The phone calls came like clockwork. Sunday evenings from Melissa, Wednesday mornings from Samuel. Stilted conversations filled with resentment, barely concealed beneath banal pleasantries. How was your week, Mom? Did you enjoy the concert you mentioned last time? The weather must be getting chilly in Boston now. I answered with equal artifice, playing the role of the content mother, while we both knew this was a transaction, nothing more. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I called them both. I'd like you to come to Boston for the holiday, I said. Bring Charles, of course, Melissa. And Samuel, do bring Rachel, his girlfriend of 3 months that he hadn't bothered to mention to me, though her presence was all over his Instagram. They agreed, of course. $50,000 ensured their compliance. I hired a professional decorator to transform the townhouse into a Thanksgiving paradise. Tasteful autumn decor, fine china, crystal goblets that caught the light from the antique chandelier. The meal would be catered by one of Boston's top restaurants, delivered and served by staff I'd hired for the day. The night before their arrival, I sat in William's study, my study, and reviewed my notes from Rebecca. The trust was performing well. The foundation was established. Everything was proceeding as planned. So why did victory taste so hollow? I poured myself another scotch and walked to the window, looking out at the glittering city below. Boston had embraced me, or at least my money. I'd been invited to charity galas, museum openings, exclusive dinner parties. People who wouldn't have glanced at me 6 months ago now sought my company, my approval, my checkbook, just like my children. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a dull ache in my chest that the expensive scotch couldn't numb. Thanksgiving Day dawned bright and cold. I dressed carefully in an emerald green dress that accentuated the auburn of my hair, applied makeup with practiced precision. Armor, as always. They arrived together, having shared a taxi from the airport, coordinating to minimize their time with me, no doubt. I greeted them at the door with perfect hospitality, taking coats, offering drinks, introducing them to the staff who would be serving dinner. Rachel, Samuel's girlfriend, was a surprise. Young, too young for him at 30, with a quick intelligence in her eyes that assessed the townhouse, the artwork, the obvious wealth with frank appreciation. She was the only one who seemed genuinely pleased to be there. "Your home is beautiful, Mrs. Campbell," she said as I showed her to the sitting room. "Samuel told me about your brother's gift. What an amazing second act to begin." "Thank you, Rachel," I said, finding myself warming to her unexpected candor. "And please, call me Michelle." Dinner was a masterpiece of culinary art and social discomfort. The food was impeccable. Heritage turkey, chestnut stuffing, cranberry compote with orange zest and star anise. The conversation was strained, each topic chosen carefully to avoid the elephant in the room, the conditional nature of our gathering. As dessert was served, pumpkin mousse in delicate chocolate cups, Melissa finally broke. "This is ridiculous," she said, setting down her spoon with a clatter. "We're sitting here pretending this is normal when we all know why we're really here." "Please elaborate," I said, taking a small bite of mousse. "The trust, the conditions, this performance we're putting on." She gestured around the table. "It's cruel, Mom." "Cruel?" I repeated, setting down my spoon. "Let me tell you about cruel, Melissa. Cruel is calling your mother on speakerphone while you're doing something else, making it clear she's an afterthought. Cruel is forgetting her birthday until Facebook reminds you. Cruel is buying a house for your mother-in-law while your own mother's ceiling leaks. That wasn't the same," she began. "Wasn't it? Patricia deserved every comfort, I believe you said. What did I deserve? The apartment with black mold in the bathroom? The disconnected heat last winter when I couldn't pay the bill on time?" Samuel shifted uncomfortably. "You never told us things were that bad." "I shouldn't have had to. The words came out sharper than I intended. I took a breath, regaining my composure. I was your mother. You should have seen me. You should have cared enough to ask. So this is punishment, Charles said quietly, making us dance for our inheritance. This is consequences, I corrected him. For the first time in your lives, you're facing the consequences of treating someone as if they don't matter. Rachel looked between us all, comprehension dawning on her face. You're not going to forgive them, are you? No matter what they do now, it's too late. The table fell silent. A young woman who'd known me for less than 4 hours had seen what my own children couldn't or wouldn't recognize. The time for genuine reconciliation passed long ago, I said softly. Now we have a business arrangement. They pretend to care, and I pretend to believe them. In return, they receive financial compensation. That's twisted, Melissa whispered, tears in her eyes. No more twisted than pretending I didn't exist until I had something you wanted, I replied. Now, shall we have coffee in the living room? I believe there's a football game Samuel might want to watch. I stood, smoothing my dress, signaling the end of the discussion. The staff began clearing the table as my family rose, moving toward the living room like actors following stage directions. Only Rachel lingered, her eyes meeting mine with unexpected compassion. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I would have liked to know you before all this. The real you. I felt something crack in my carefully constructed facade. The real me died a long time ago, I told her. Somewhere between the second job I took to pay for Samuel's college and the night I ate crackers for dinner so Melissa could have a prom dress. She nodded slowly. I understand why you're doing this. I just wonder if it's healing anything. It wasn't meant to heal, I said. It was meant to balance the scales. Rachel touched my arm lightly. Just don't lose yourself in the process. She walked away to join the others, leaving me alone in the dining room, surrounded by the remnants of a perfect meal that had nourished no one. Winter descended on Boston with theatrical flair, swirling snow, bitter winds that cut through even the finest wool coat, Christmas lights reflecting off frozen puddles. The townhouse remained warm, insulated by money and the best heating system money could buy. December brought performative gestures of familial affection. Christmas cards with professional photos, Melissa and Charles in matching sweaters, Samuel and Rachel against a backdrop of twinkling lights. Phone calls filled with forced cheer. Inquiries about my holiday plans that held no genuine concern. We'd love to have you in Chicago for Christmas, Samuel said during our Wednesday call, the reluctance evident beneath his carefully modulated tone. That's thoughtful, I replied. But I've made other plans. The relief in his voice was palpable. Oh? Something special? Yes, I said, offering no elaboration. The truth was, I'd arranged to spend Christmas at a luxury resort in Aspen. Alone. I'd never skied in my life, but the resort offered other amenities. A world-class spa, gourmet restaurants, a lounge with panoramic mountain views where I could sit with a book and a glass of wine, watching the beautiful people drift by. I didn't tell my children this. Let them wonder. Let them picture me alone in the townhouse, surrounded by wealth but empty of connection. Let them feel a sliver of the guilt they should have felt years ago. The weeks passed in a blur of preparations. I met regularly with Rebecca Lynn and Amara to review the foundation's progress. We'd identified the first recipients of our scholarships, 5 promising students from underfunded schools in Massachusetts. Each would receive full tuition at the college of their choice, plus a living stipend and mentorship. You're changing lives, Amara told me after one particularly productive meeting. These kids would never have had these opportunities otherwise. I nodded, trying to feel the satisfaction such praise should bring. The foundation was doing good work, important work, work that mattered more than the petty revenge I was exacting on my children. Yet when I lay awake at night in William's king-sized bed, my bed now, it wasn't the grateful faces of scholarship recipients I saw. It was Melissa's expression when I'd mentioned the leaking pipes, Samuel's discomfort when I referenced the money he'd borrowed, the transparent calculation in their eyes when they realized I had something they wanted. The week before Christmas, an unexpected visitor arrived at my door. Rachel stood on my doorstep, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. cheeks flushed from the cold. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," she said. "Samuel doesn't know I'm here." I invited her in, curious despite myself. She declined coffee but accepted tea, wrapping her cold hands around the delicate porcelain cup as we sat in the front parlor. "I broke up with Samuel last night," she said without preamble. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not." A small smile played at her lips. "And you shouldn't be. He wasn't the man I thought he was. Few people are." She nodded, taking a sip of tea. "After Thanksgiving, I started noticing things. The way he talked about you when you weren't around. The way he checked the calendar obsessively to make sure he didn't miss the weekly call. Not because he cared, but because of the money. And this surprised you?" "It disappointed me," she corrected. "I come from nothing, Michelle. Foster care, scholarships, student loans I'm still paying off. I know what it's like to struggle, to work 3 jobs and still barely make rent. When Samuel told me about your situation before, how you'd inherited all this money, I assumed you were some wealthy woman who'd never known hardship." I laughed softly. "Far from it. I know that now. And I know what your children did, or didn't do, before you had money." She set down her cup. "That's why I'm here. I thought you should know that your plan is working. Samuel is miserable. Melissa is drinking more than she should. They talk about you like you're a tyrannical bank manager who holds their financial future in your hands. Isn't that what they always thought? A source of loans, financial support, occasional babysitting? Probably," Rachel admitted. "But now they can't hide from it. You've made the transaction explicit." I studied her thoughtfully. "Why tell me this? Why come here?" She met my gaze steadily. "Because I think you deserve to know that you've won. They're suffering. They understand on some level what they did. But I also think you deserve to know that this victory won't heal what's broken. I never expected it to. Didn't you? Even a little?" She leaned forward. "You're punishing them for treating you as nothing more than a resource. But now that's exactly what you've become to them. A resource to be managed, appeased, manipulated for financial gain." Her words struck with unexpected force. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street below. "What would you have me do, Rachel? Forgive them? Pretend those years of neglect never happened? Hand over millions with no strings attached so they can continue to ignore me?" "No," she said quietly. "But there might be a middle path. One that holds them accountable without destroying any possibility of genuine relationship in the future." "There is no genuine relationship," I said flatly. "There never was. Not once they became adults with their own lives." Rachel was silent for a moment. "My last foster mother, before I aged out of the system, told me something I've never forgotten. She said, 'Hurt people, but healed people heal people.' I didn't understand it then. I think I'm starting to now." I turned back to face her. "Are you suggesting I'm not healed?" "I'm suggesting that none of us are. Fully. And that true power isn't about control or punishment. It's about breaking cycles." After she left, I sat in William's study for a long time, turning her words over in my mind. The implication that my revenge, however justified, was keeping me tethered to the very pain I was trying to transcend. The suggestion that there might be another way forward, neither naive forgiveness nor cold retribution. I pulled out the letter William had left me, reading it again. "This inheritance won't fix what's broken between us, but perhaps it will give you the freedom I never had. The freedom to live without compromise, without begging for scraps of affection from those who should love you unconditionally. Use it wisely, little sister." Had I used it wisely? Or had I merely inverted the power dynamic without truly freeing myself? The question followed me to Aspen, haunting the luxurious suite with its mountain views and fireplace that lit with the touch of a button. It lingered as I sat in the spa, as I dined in 5-star restaurants, as I watched wealthy families exchange extravagant gifts on Christmas morning. On New Year's Eve, I sat alone on my balcony, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, watching fireworks explode over the mountains. My phone buzzed with obligatory messages from my children. "Happy New Year, Mom. Hope 2026 is your best year yet. Love, Melissa and Charles." Wishing you health and happiness in the coming year. Call you Wednesday as usual. Samuel formulaic, empty. Exactly what I'd demanded from them. As the final fireworks faded, I made a decision. I called Rebecca first thing the next morning. I need to make changes to the trust, I told her. Substantial changes. 2 weeks later, we all gathered in her conference room again. My children looked wary. Charles resigned, all of them clearly expecting some new, more onerous condition to the financial arrangement. Rebecca distributed new documents with her usual efficiency. Michelle has decided to restructure the trusts, she explained. The foundation will remain the primary beneficiary of her estate. However, the trusts for Melissa and Samuel are being modified. My children exchanged nervous glances. The behavioral conditions are being removed, Rebecca continued. Instead, each trust will provide a one-time payment of $250,000 to be dispersed immediately. The remaining $500,000 from each trust will be held until Michelle's death, at which point it will transfer to Melissa and Samuel respectively, regardless of their relationship with Michelle during her lifetime. The silence in the room was profound. I don't understand, Melissa finally said. It's simple, I replied. I'm freeing you from the obligation to pretend. The quarterly payments, the forced phone calls, the obligatory visits, all of it ends today. You'll each receive a substantial sum now, and more when I'm gone, with no strings attached. But why? Samuel asked, confusion evident in his expression. Because the arrangement wasn't healing anything, I said, echoing Rachel's words. Not for you, and not for me. It was just perpetuating a dysfunctional dynamic with different power dynamics. So, you're just letting us go? Melissa's voice held a hint of hurt I hadn't expected. I'm releasing us all, I corrected her. You from the obligation to perform family feeling you don't genuinely possess, and me from the illusion that I can purchase what was never freely given. And if we want to stay in touch? Samuel asked. Not for money, but because you're our mother? I looked at him skeptically. Do you want that? He hesitated, then shrugged. I don't know. I haven't tried it without financial incentive in a long time. A startling honesty. Perhaps the first real thing he'd said to me in years. That's fair, I acknowledged. The door remains open, but I'm removing both the carrot and the stick. Whatever relationship we have, or don't have, going forward will be based on genuine feeling, not financial calculation. We signed the new paperwork in silence. When it was done, Rebecca excused herself, leaving us alone in the conference room. So that's it? Melissa asked. We just go our separate ways? That's up to you, I said, gathering my coat and purse. I'll be here in Boston, living my life, building the foundation. If you want to be part of that life, it won't be because I'm paying you or threatening you. It will be your choice, freely made. I walked to the door, then paused, turning back to them one last time. For what it's worth, I hope someday you understand why I did this. All of it. Not to hurt you, but to finally set us all free. I stepped into the hallway, closing the door softly behind me. Freedom, I was discovering, wasn't found in revenge or in wealth, or even in perfectly executed justice. It was found in the quiet dignity of walking away from what no longer served your soul, even if that something was the fantasy of family you'd clung to for decades. As I stepped out into the winter sunshine, I realized I was smiling. A real smile, not the cold curve of lips I'd perfected for our performances. Whatever happened next, whether my children reached out or disappeared forever, I was finally, truly free. William had given me more than money. He'd given me the chance to break the chains of expectation that had bound me for so long. The power to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm worth, and I will no longer accept anything less.